What if that nagging feeling in the back of your neck was real? What if those hands reaching out from the dark that you believed were there? What if the monster in the basement really existed? And what if there was really something under the bed? Would you have the courage to face your fears?
Confessions from an Apocalypse, written by Liss322018 from r/nosleep. It started with a raccoon. A dead raccoon. I don't know how everything escalated so fast from there. Maybe we brought it on by our lack of compassion. We honestly deserve no less. The raccoon's body was found in the gutter next to our house. Its torn coat matted with blood as its eyes remained forever unfocused. I wanted it gone. Death and disease that close to our slice of suburbia was unacceptable. What if the kids played with it? What if a dog rolled in it? The filthy thing had to go. My husband refused to dispose of it. He wasn't going to touch the germ-ridden corpse. That's what they paid the garbage men for. Let them do it. So with that refusal, it left me with the responsibility to deal with it. I called the city and complained. What else was I going to do? It's not like I was going to touch the damn thing, especially with a fresh manicure. The city worker told me they'd send somebody out there if they had time, but I could hear it in her voice. It wasn't very high up on her list at all. Yes, that was my tax dollars hard at work. Days went by and the raccoon continued to lay there, its corpse bloated by the minute. I was certain at any moment the blasted thing would pop and spray the entire neighborhood with its filth. And the smell was worse. Summertime was here, and the long days of endless heat had caused a stench to waft through the breeze. I couldn't enjoy my me time out in the patio because of it. How could that animal be so inconsiderate as to die outside of my home? I was at my wit's end. Something had to be done. So, I did what any irritated woman would do. I grabbed a broom and marched outside. As I got closer to the beast, I realized my mistake. The smell was overpowering this close to it. It was all I could do to keep my breakfast down. This stench was something no proper woman should ever have to deal with. But I was here and I wanted the vile thing gone. I looked around, hoping for inspiration to come to me. Luckily, it did. There was a storm drain leading to the sewers not very far from the rotting abomination. I knew what I had to do. I was going to shove that wretched thing down into the sewers. I brought the broom to the corpse's side and pushed with all my might. The body slid forward, breaking open as it did. Putrid liquid flowed out of the remains, coating the straws of the broom. I gagged, trying to avert my eyes from the gore, but kept pushing with all my strength. The body continued to slide, my efforts made easier as more fluids ran. My shoes tried to slip in it, and I cursed the animal as I went. How dare it choose my curb to rot against? I damned its soul to the worst torment hell could offer. No one subjected me to this and got away with it. It would pay. I got it to the grate and shoved it towards the opening. With a satisfying crunch, it dropped through into the darkness below. With one final glance at the rot smeared across the blacktop, I turned and headed back to the house to burn the broom in my shoes. I gave no thought whatsoever to the life that had been taken on this road, only to the inconvenience it put me through. I had cursed the creature with all the hate I could muster. I think about that now as I sit here in this dark, abandoned house, trying to purge my soul of this sin by the dying candlelight. I have lost everything because of my selfishness. I'm alone now. My family taken from me. This is my punishment. I know that. Wait, I hear them outside. The zombies must have been drawn to the flickering light of the candle. I don't know how long my barricades will last. I have to get this out. I need those of you left to know the truth. The zombie plague is my fault. I knew my curses had been heard by someone's ears. I had cursed that raccoon soul to the worst torment hell had to offer. That night, after I shoved the body down in the sewers, the poor doomed creature had crawled into my bedroom, dragged its broken body behind it. There was nothing I could do as the reanimated corpse launched itself at my husband. Its dead eyes watched me as it tore the flesh from his bones. So this is my confession. My selfishness created the first zombie. Deep Rock Desolation. A creepypasta from the depths of Hoxie's. It was just another day on Hoxie's 4, that dreaded and desolated planet deep in the galactic frontier. My fellow dwarves and I were on another routine mining operation for the notorious Deep Rock Galactic Corporation. We thought we knew every danger this rock could throw at us: hordes of bugs, cave leeches, and the ever-present darkness. But we were wrong. It started subtly, as most things do on Hoxie's. We were deep underground, chipping away at the precious minerals hidden within the caverns, our trusty drills and pickaxes echoing through the tunnels. Then, out of the darkness, we heard it. A low, guttural growl that chilled our spines. "Did you guys hear that?" I asked over the comms. My fellow dwarves, gruff and battle-hardened, didn't respond immediately, but the tension in the air was palpable. "Probably just another glyphid rumbling," one of them finally grumbled. But it wasn't the bugs. It was something far worse. As we continued to mine, the growls grew louder, more insistent. The walls of the cave seemed to come in on us, and then we saw them. Zombies, or what used to be our fellow miners. Their skin was a sickly shade of green, their eyes vacant and milky. Tattered Deep Rock Galactic uniforms clung to their emaciated bodies. They moved with an unnatural hunger, their movements jerky and disjointed. "By Carl's beard, what in the name of Hoxie's is this?" someone exclaimed. We opened fire, mowing down the zombie miners with our powerful weaponry, but they kept coming, relentless in their pursuit. Each one we put down just seemed to rise again, undeterred by the hail of bullets. "Fall back!" I shouted. We retreated deeper into the cave, hoping to find some escape from this nightmare, but no matter how far we went, the zombies were always right behind us, their incessant growling echoing through the tunnels. As we ran, the cave itself seemed to change, warping and distorting like a living entity. The walls closed in, the ceiling hung lower, and the floor became uneven and treacherous. It was that this very planet itself was conspiring against us. We reached a dead end, and there was no escape. The zombie miners closed in, their horrid moans filling our ears. I saw the fear in my comrades' eyes as they fought desperately, but it was futile. The zombies overwhelmed us, tearing into our flesh with their rotting hands. As darkness closed in around me, I realized that the planet had claimed us. Hoxie's 4 was no ordinary rock. It was a living nightmare, a place where the horrors of the deep had taken on a new form, the form of a fallen comrade, twisted and hungry for our flesh. I'm an elite zombie hunter with Igor. This was the worst day of my life since the apocalypse. Written by J Group from r/nosleep. At first, when the dead began to rise, there was panic, mayhem, everything we had seen in movies and television. It all came to pass. All governments were wiped out, every world leader killed and reanimated. The systems and structures that we all had come to rely on was revealed for the thin and fragile glass tower that it was, and it shattered into a million pieces and collapsed. It was total anarchy, at least for a little while. Small groups of survivors such as myself roamed the countryside for months, looking for shelter, setting up camps. That was how it started in the beginning. Hunter-gatherer types. We traveled around trying to find a place to call home for a little while, until the hordes of zombies began to form and cluster together, wiping out everything in their path. Then they'd move on. But after a while, structures began to form. Systems. Organization from the chaos. Evenness from the entropy. I was within that elite group of disciplined warrior survivors from the very beginning. Those of us who had decided to make a change for the better, and to set up something to replace the nothing that currently existed. That was how Igor was formed. International Ghoul Hunters, Operation Roundtable. By that point, we had a few pilots who could take us around and bring us all together for face-to-face meetings when we had to. We had also managed to set up some kind of rudimentary internet again, that we could all use for the purpose of communication. It wasn't anything near as good as the original, of course, more akin to a BBS platform from the 1990s, but it was something. The Round Table, as we called it at first, was a loose organization of leaders from various nations who wanted to work collaboratively together to bring the world back to normal, and to deal with the superiors. The superiors were what we called the zombies who had started to evolve. They terrified all of us more than anything we had ever seen, and we knew if we didn't take them out, they would destroy us all. Every bit of progress we had made would be undone. Of course, every round table needs an Arthur, and we had one. Perhaps that was the reason why we named the organization what we did. I honestly don't remember. But it was he who brought us all together. Who knows if that is his real name or not, but it was all I ever knew him as. Of course, he was British to boot. I'm Canadian myself. We had Americans as well, Germans, French, Brazilians, Koreans, Australians, South Africans, and representatives from a dozen other countries. It was a big table. Arthur had agents planted all over the world, and I was one of them. We rooted out the Supremes and reported back to him with our findings. Then we would send backup as necessary to take them out before they could build too big of an army. Oh yeah, did I mention? The Supremes could telekinetically control entire hordes of zombies? Because that's the whole problem with them. You can't have people like that around in the zombie apocalypse. You just can't. It's not a good idea to let folks like that hang around. They're nothing but trouble. The guy I'm about to tell you about was no exception. It was a typical reconnaissance mission at first. We were in the downtown core of Toronto, the burnt-out husk of towering buildings all around us. The city of a couple million people was a hollow shell of its former self. No one would have dared go into that city at the beginning. But now it was a different story. The undead ghouls who had taken over there were few and far in between after years of hard times, and we could take care of them handily. At least so we thought. Want to go check out the old Rogers Center? Somebody said. I think it might have been Cassie. And then again, it could have been Stella. It doesn't matter. It was no one's fault. Sure, I said. If it had been a busier day, I would have said no. I was a leader after all. But it was quiet. We had barely run into any undead since that morning. It was like they were all hiding out somewhere. I missed going to the Blue Jays game, even if they never did win another one without Joe Carter. We walked up the long staircase off of Front Street, making our way towards the stadium. I had an image in my mind of going onto the field, picking up a bat, and hitting a ball with it. I imagined it sailing into the outfield, a major league home run. Usually, I was so mission-focused, but I was goofing off that day. Maybe I was just tired of the grind. I think maybe it was something else too, though. The glass doors were all smashed out, making it easy to get inside. There were a couple of zombies milling around the foyer, and we made quick work of them. Cassie drove her katana blade through an eyeball. Frank caved in a skull with a sledgehammer. Tom stood back, watching out for an unexpected ambush, ready to intervene with his crossbow if necessary. The security gates had been destroyed by looters, and we slipped past them easily. We made our way towards the playing field, and I was overwhelmed by nostalgia. Memories of going to see baseball games with my wife, my family, my friends. It all came flooding back. My knees buckled from the emotion of it all. They were dead. Every last one of them. I would never see them again. I would never watch another baseball game. There would be no more picnics, beach outings, or family dinners for any of us. What was the point of it all? My team must have sensed my sudden melancholy because they stopped with me and actually said a few sympathetic words. "Hey man, you okay?" Frank asked. "Give him a minute. He's dealing with something. We've all got shit from our past that comes back sometimes." I shook my head, trying to get rid of the thoughts. It wasn't easy. "Let's go play some ball," I said, trying to smile and feeling it stretch fake across my face, like a too thin coat of paint attempting to conceal a worn and splintering facade. Frank wasn't buying it, but was nice enough to not say anything. He put his meaty arm around me, and the five of us went down the aisle towards the playing field. Tom was quiet as usual, keeping an eye out behind us for everyone looking to sneak up on us. Surprisingly enough, the dugout still contained a few baseball bats and balls, even a couple of gloves. It looked like the players had cleared out in a hurry, and no one had come back since. We went out onto the field, taking our impromptu positions, and I saw the nervous looks on everyone's face. It had been so quiet lately, but we knew how fast things could change. Still, we thought we could handle anything. Frank threw a pitch at the strike zone. It was a lob and I managed to give it a good crack on the first swing. The ball went sailing into the air and towards left field. Cassie ran for it and grabbed it, throwing it back to the infield. Stella was playing catcher behind home plate, while Tom stood off to the side of the field in the stands, looking around, waiting for trouble. "Come on, Tom," I yelled. "It's no fun without another batter. If you come down, you can take a next swing." I thought he would say no. Tom was always the one who stayed off to the side while the rest of us had these brief moments of fun. The stoic bastard never wanted any part of it. But he surprised me, and he came down to the field, actually grinning for once. I handed him the bat, and he stood at the plate, waiting for the next pitch. The huge, empty Major League Baseball stadium was hauntingly quiet, our every movement echoing across the vast space around us. Frank threw the ball a couple more times before Tom managed to get a hit. The ball went far into center field, and Cassie went running for it. Tom made a dash for first base, then for second. Frank was out there yelling for Cassie to throw it to him at second, saying they would get him out there. That was when I saw them. I was speechless for a minute, and the ball almost hit me in the head when someone threw it into home plate after an error. They had all been focused on the play and didn't see what was happening around us. At all the entrances, all around the field, undead were filtering in like patrons just before a big game was about to start. They were coming down the aisles toward us from every direction. It took a minute for the others to notice. I was too dumbstruck to say anything. Our game stopped entirely when they saw me looking and noticed our dilemma. Everyone dropped their baseball mitts and ran for their weapons. But we knew it was hopeless. We knew we were doomed. There was clearly a superior here, in the stadium with us. He was commanding the undead that were surrounding us on all sides. That was the only way they could be so organized. They wandered onto the field lazily, without haste, only revealing their surprising hunger as they came close enough to smell our warmth and our sweat. Then they appeared suddenly ravenous, opening their mouths wide and snapping at us with unnatural speed. The ghouls went after poor Frank the worst. He was a huge man, about 6'10". The superior probably saw him and commanded them to go after him first. He swung his sledgehammer around at a giant arc, obliterating several zombie heads with one fell swoop. But there was a wolf among them. Wolves are what we call the fast ones. The ones who act slow at first but then attack with stunning speed and ingenuity. They're not superiors, but they're close. Ever hear the expression, like a wolf in sheep's clothing? That's why we call them that. Because you think they're normal ghouls, but then they surprise you and tear your throat out with their bare hands. The wolf jumped on Frank while his back was turned, swinging his hammer in a great arc around him. It landed on his back and began to tear at the muscles in his neck, ripping them apart while he screamed. As I was distracted by that, 4 zombies surrounded me, and I had to sidestep quickly to prevent myself from getting devoured. I quickly swung the black bat I was carrying and caught one upside the head, causing him to stagger backwards. He regained his balance almost instantly and came towards me. While I was momentarily focused on that, the other 3 came at me, as well as 6 more. We were quickly becoming outnumbered, and hundreds more were swarming in by the second. They were storming the field like an angry mob. Only this mob was intent on eating our flesh. The smell of all of them was horrifying, and the terror I felt overwhelming. All I could see was the rotten faces all around me, black teeth and eyeballs oozing pus. Their skin was gray and decaying, with gaps and tears showing exposed muscle and bone beneath. And the noise of them all, moaning and gurgling while they attacked us with a complete lack of emotion or self-awareness. I saw Cassie go down and her sword went flying into the air and landed near me. Hurrying over to it, I picked it up off the ground, knowing how much it meant to her. I wanted to keep it safe, even if it was only as a tribute to her. Her terrified and desperate screams rang out hollow across the field. That was when I vowed that I would get out of there, one way or another. The wolf zombie came running towards me and launched itself into the air. I drove the sword point into his eye as he did, and the momentum carried his head right through the steel, destroying his brain. At that moment, I realized all my friends were dead. The horde was zeroing in on me, with no one else in focus their efforts on. Big Frank the Tank stood tall among them, his eyes now red and full of hunger and hate. Cassie stood up next and stalked toward me, joining the crowd of undead as they approached. They attacked me without mercy, my friends and foe alike, as if we had never known each other. I fought like I had never fought before, and let me tell you, I'm known for my ability to get out of situations even as completely fucked up as this one. I slashed off zombies' faces with the katana, cutting heads off while spinning like a dervish and somersaulting through the air. I parried and thrusted, hacked and slashed, drove through their legs and climbed atop the crowd's shoulders, severing heads and bouncing upon the ones that stood there, jam-packed together, using them as planks to springboard to and fro while I did my dirty work. Necrotic hands grasped my legs all the while, tearing long and ragged gashes from my flesh, breaking off fingernails that remained lodged inside me. Eventually, the pile of corpses was staggeringly high. It filled the baseball field almost. But even I had my limits. My arms were filled with blood, heavy and clumsy after hours of defending myself from never-ending onslaught of undead. One of them was cunning and quick, a wolf probably. I thought I had them all beat, but he grabbed me and took me down, and that was it. I was finished, I assumed, as the crowd of them remaining came at me and descending upon me with salivating mouths and hungry eyes, their teeth bared and hands outstretched like greedy infants reaching for a teat. But the superior had other plans. He floated in through the air, descending among the crowd of them just as they were about to consume my flesh. "You, I will keep alive," he said. "You are strong, and I like strong people by my side. I will keep you as my scribe. You will write what will become the new history books, telling of my conquests, making it known for generations after that it was I who created this new world." Thanks? I wasn't really happy with this new arrangement he was imposing, but then again, I really wasn't in a position to argue. "Does that mean you aren't going to eat my brains?" "Precisely. We can't have the new scribe stumbling around, drooling all over the scrolls as he writes the history books, can we?" I was very relieved. He noticed that and made a little tisk noise. "Oh, I didn't mean for you to get too excited. I said I can't eat your brains. I didn't say anything about the rest of you." The undead looked at me with hungry eyes once again, now having obtained permission to enjoy a meal, albeit within a limited menu. "Only his lower extremities, please. He'll need those hands of his to write with. We wouldn't want that juicy brain to go to waste, now would we?" The pack of them closest to me began to pull strips of flesh off my body with their bare hands as I screamed. They drooled and slobbered as they feasted on my legs and feet until there was nothing left of them. The pain was unimaginable, the suffering. Well, it's pointless to talk about now. I have a new kind of suffering to deal with at this point in my life. Now I get to write about the new world as it is created, a horror playland for a demented psychopath who enjoys nothing more than torment and suffering. He controls them all now, the whole lot of them. I get dragged around like his publicist, putting out press releases that nobody can read but me and him, and I'm starting to get the feeling he's practically illiterate. I sure hope Igor is out there somewhere. If not, I'm really fucked. I think I might have witnessed the beginning of the zombie apocalypse, but no one believes me. Written by Yevra Yimris on r/nosleep. I work as an assistant to the county medical examiner in Blank County, Kansas. This is just a fancy way of saying that I work the night shift in the morgue. The other night, a case came in that you are not going to believe. I mean, the cops didn't believe me, so why would you? My friend Bobby, an EMT, gave me the heads up while they were en route. It was about 11:30 p.m. I had been on shift for about 30 minutes, putting her about the examination room, when the radio crackled to life.
Unit 4, ME. You copy? Over?
ME, this is Blank. Is that you, Bobby?
Yeah, I'm bringing you a doozy.
What do you got?
Teen involved in some kind of chemical accident.
Special preps?
Don't know, maybe a bucket. This guy has a bag of bloody bones.
Great. I'll put on heavy-duty gloves.
See you soon. Unit 4, over and out.
I busied myself prepping a gurney and heading down to the ER to greet the ambulance. I didn't have long to wait. They must not have been very far out when Bobby had called. They pulled up into the roundabout, and Bobby and Sheila jumped out of the cab and met me around the back of the vehicle. Bobby popped up to the back of the van, and the two of them slid out the gurney, dropped the wheels, and lined it up with the one I'd brought from the hospital. Bobby nodded at the bloody bag. "Give me a hand with this." I moved to the other end, and we each grabbed and heaved. The bag was surprisingly light and flexible. There was a dull rattle as we set it on the other gurney. "What the hell?" I muttered. "You're telling me," agreed Bobby. "Not much left of this kid. A pile of bloody bones by the time we got there." "What the hell happened?" "Kid was dicking around at the sinkhole over on blank. Cops say he was overcome by some corrosive gas. Never seen anything like it." I looked up at Bobby. He'd been an EMT for a long time and had seen just about everything. His face was pale and held my gaze rather than look down at the bloody bag. Sheila had already run into the lobby to get coffee for them. "You okay?" Bobby shrugged. "Yeah, I'll be okay. Just can't shake this feeling Screw it, I'll be fine once I get some coffee in me." Bobby helped me wheel the gurney through the sliding ER doors. I checked in at the reception and filled out the required paperwork for a DOA. I said my goodbyes to Sheila and Bobby, and we parted ways. I whistled to myself tunelessly as I pushed the rolling bed down the long hall towards the staff elevator. As I waited in the empty hall, we remained a skeleton crew after 12 a.m. on weekdays. I noticed an odd smell, something like burning, rotting leaves. It had to be coming from the body, but usually these bags blocked out most of the smells, at least until they were opened. The elevator dinged. The doors opened, and I wheeled in my most recent client. I punched the button for the basement and waited impatiently as the old rumbling elevator took me down. The basement was as quiet as, well, a morgue, I suppose. I was usually the only one down here until housekeeping came through around 4. I was used to it though and enjoyed the solitude. I pushed the gurney into the exam room and up against the main table. I figured I'd do my best to get the body in order. I put it on ice to await Doc Corrigan's arrival in the morning for the autopsy. I put on a pair of heavy-duty latex gloves and unzipped the body bag. A nauseating bust of putrefied air escaped from the bag. The overwhelming stench of rotting flesh and burning leaves assaulted my nostrils. A smell that shouldn't be present in a fresh corpse. For the first time in my career as a morgue attendant, I almost regurgitated the cold-cut combo I'd had for supper. Somehow managing to regain control of my stomach contents, as the odor began to dissipate, I examined the body I had been given. Bobby had been accurate in his description. The body was little more than damp bones covered in streaks of blood and what might be half-dissolved muscle tissue and skin. The internal organs were completely missing unless some of the discolored streaks represented what was left of them. I removed the skull first. It dripped gore and I double-checked my gloves to make sure that the remnants of the corrosive wasn't eating through them. They seemed fine. The skull was devoid of any features but for a small pool of gray liquid that might once have been a brain. I sat at the head of the table. As I turned back to the bag, I heard a creak and turned back to see the empty eye sockets of the skull staring directly at me. I nearly jumped out of my skin and went into full panic mode before I realized I had not affixed the screws that would hold it into place, and I had simply become unbalanced. Why the hell was I so jumpy? I realigned the skull and affixed the screws, secure in the knowledge it wouldn't move again, before turning back to the bag. The spine was surprisingly intact. It seemed to be held together by a dark, gummy substance running up the center that might have been the spinal cord. I laid the backbone on the table and attached to the skull with temporary elastic fasteners. As I turned back to the black bag, I realized I was humming Dem Bones. Now that the odor had dissipated, and I was over my initial shock, the project of reassembling the skeletal remains of the unfortunate teenager became a fascinating puzzle. I set to work in earnest, occasionally singing snatches of Dem Bones out loud. I worked diligently for almost 3 hours. I had retrieved every bone that was in the bag. Every bone, that is, except one. The left ulna was completely missing. Nowhere could I find it in the bag. I drained the liquid that remained in the bag into a gallon-sized glass jar. The multicolored goo filled the jar about 3/4 full. Still, I could find no left ulna. Strange. It was completely unlike Bobby and Sheila to leave anything at the scene of an accident. But then again, usually the bodies were intact. I resolved to radio Bobby about it, but right now it was 3 a.m. Time for a smoke break and a can of soda. I unfolded a paper drape and pulled it up over the skeletal remains. I went upstairs and outside. I walked across the street to the 24-hour McDonald's, retrieving a half-pack full of Pall Malls in the hoodie pocket, shaking a cig loose, and pulling it free from pursed lips. I lit the cigarette and stood in the McDonald's parking lot, puffing my life away. I had to smoke at the Mickey D's parking lot because the hospital didn't allow smoking on the grounds. Yeah, I know these things are going to kill me, but bad habits are hard to break. I finished the cigarette, crushing the remnants beneath the ball of my foot, and went inside to purchase a Dr. Pepper, sipping on the soda. I started back across the street towards the hospital. I stopped in the middle of the crosswalk, halfway across the street. I had the overwhelming sense that something was watching me. I stood there frozen, not daring to look around. A honking car horn brought me out of it, and I hurried on across. Once back in the hospital, the sensation left me, and I shook myself. Weird. I hurried back down to the morgue exam room. I needed to put the skeleton back on ice before it started to smell in earnest. I threw open the door and flipped on the lights. I stopped short. The skeleton was sitting upright on the examination table. Its legs hung over the side. It's faced away from me, its hands resting on the table on either side. I froze again. What the fuck? Was this someone's idea of a joke? My heart damn near stopped. I glanced around the room, but no one else was there. I stuck my head back in the hall. "Ha ha, Ernest, you got me. Good one," I called, but there was no response. I looked back toward the skeleton and my breath caught in my throat. Something black and sinuous wove in and out and around the bones. It was the substance from the spine, spreading like a growth of dark ivy and long dark fingers. It clung to the bones and articulated the limbs. Suddenly, the skeleton jumped off the table, the bones of its heels clattering on the white tile of the exam room. I let out an involuntary gasp, and the thing that had been a teenage boy turned toward me. The first thing my paralyzed mind noticed was the empty eye sockets were filled with 2 balls of luminous green gas. Jesus fuck, what the fuck? I backpedaled to the door and slammed it shut. Now what? I ran for the elevator and punched the button rapidly. I know that doesn't help, but I was very close to full-blown panic attack. I heard a pounding and scraping on the morgue door. It didn't seem the thing knew how to work a doorknob, but somehow I didn't think that would hold it long. Finally, after what seemed like forever, the elevator arrived. I jumped in and slammed the hand down on the closed door button, heart pounding. I hit the button for the first floor. I needed to notify security. I ran down the hall towards the security office, just off of emergency. I dodged an orderly and a nurse who both looked at me like I was crazy. Maybe I was, but I wasn't going to take any chances. I burst in the office, startling Phil into dropping his styrofoam cup of coffee on the floor. Jesus blank, what the hell? Phil, something is loose in the morgue. What? He asked, dumbfounded as he got down to mop up the spilled coffee. Leave that, damn it. Come on, you gotta see it to believe it. I began pulling on his uniform sleeve. The slight, paunchy, middle-aged security guard got awkwardly to his feet. Okay, but if you're yanking my chain, I'll wrap you up in the side of the head. I sprinted back down the hall towards the elevator, much to the chagrin of the resident on duty. Phil followed after me at a sedated pace, but fortunately, he arrived about the same time as the elevator came. We go in and punch the button for a basement level, looking sidelong at Phil. You got your piece? He patted the holster that was half concealed by his belly. I've got it, won't need it, but I've got it. The elevator door opened and I darted a glance in both directions. When I caught sight of the morgue entrance, I paused. Oh shit, I muttered. What? Asked Phil, stepping into the hallway. The door to the morgue is open. So, you probably just didn't shut it all the way. He started down the hall towards the exam room. I followed a half a step behind, knowing full well that I closed that door and made sure it latched. Before I could stop him, Phil stepped into the exam room. God damn it, man! He roared, and I stepped into the room in time to see him slam a ham fist down on the table. You scare me half to death, spill my coffee, and lead me on a wild goose chase? He turned to glare at me, his brow wrinkled in an irritated scowl. There's no one here, fool! He was right. I looked around the exam room, and the skeleton was nowhere to be seen. There was barely any indication that we had ever been there. I indicated the empty body bag on the gurney. I swear to God, I saw what I saw. Do you really think Bobby and Sheila brought me an empty bag? Phil picked at the empty bag, wrinkling his nose at the slight, lingering smell. Then he turned toward me, narrowing his eyes. You high, boy? What? No! Besides, weed doesn't cause hallucinations. Somebody's pranking you. They probably already put the body in one of the cold chambers. He started walking that way, but I grabbed his arm. Wait! I had noticed something out of place. The door to Mrs. Wilkinson's chamber was slightly ajar. I know I didn't leave that drawer open. Nonsense, boy! Phil pulled my grasp and moved over to the cold chambers. Let's see what we got here. He yanked on the handle and slid out the door. He stumbled backwards, yammering nonsensically. Mrs. Wilkins was still on the slab, but she wasn't alone. Crouched atop her body, pressed in close, was a skeleton I had been examining only an hour ago. Its bony fingers were locked tight around the dead woman's neck. Tendrils of black ooze extended from their hands and snaked into the ears of the corpse. Even from where I stood, I could see that they pulsed rhythmically. A third, thicker tendril? Tube? Tentacle? Extruded from the mouth hole of the skeletal creature and buried itself in the stomach of the dead old woman. It too pulsed in a sucking motion. Phil was fumbling for his sidearm, but you can tell he wasn't used to pulling it. You know how in old movies, when they animated skeletons, they move in a blocky, clumsy manner? This thing didn't move like that at all. It leaped at Phil with cat-like grace, knocking him prone. Then it jumped again, clear over me on the exam table before bolting out the door. I helped Phil to his feet as he finally got his gun unholstered. His normally dark face looked 3 shades paler, and I'm pretty sure he'd gone green. He stared back and forth between old Lady Wilkinson and the door through which the creature had fled. What the hell was that? That, my friend, I said, shaking visibly, was the patient that Bobby and Sheila brought me this evening. Nah, said Phil, slowly regaining his composure. That was some kind of animal. Already his mind was doing that thing human minds do when faced with the impossible. I better go after it, make sure it doesn't hurt anybody. Before I could stop him, Phil was already heading out the door. He turned his head back as he left. Make sure you clean up in here and figure out what happened to these bones. Phil went hunting the animal, and I turned toward poor Mrs. Wilkinson. A cursory investigation implied her brains and gut had been liquefied. I'd leave a note for Dr. Corrigan so he could do an examination when he came in. There was no finding the missing bones. They were running about the hospital somewhere. I marked the jar of fluids I'd collected as unknown and put it in cold storage. That would have to be tested. It's all we had of the dead kid. I busied myself with the necessary paperwork and waited nervously for my shift to end. Phil returned just as my shift was ending. His gun was holstered and he looked flustered and out of breath. Lost it, he panted. Damn thing is fast. Whatever it is. Some kind of monkey, maybe. Think I saw it on the roof of the McDonald's across the street. He plopped himself down in a chair by the counter on one side of the exam room. Don't go anywhere. You and I are due downtown to make a statement to the police. You ever find the bones? You know, I didn't. I wish I could make him understand. Try as I might, I could not believe what I'd seen as was an animal. Creature must have run off with them. Something like that, I agreed. Did he eat much of the dead broad? Mrs. Wilkinson? No, not much. I couldn't believe I was having this conversation. That's good. At least. Come on, let's get this over with. I tried to tell the police the truth, but they didn't believe me. I eventually accepted their explanation that I must have fallen asleep when I woke up, saw the monkey, and confused it with a nightmare. It was the only way that they'd let me leave. But that's bullshit. I know what I saw. That creature, the walking, leaping nightmare of a skeleton, was out there. Somewhere. I went to a zombie-themed role-playing event, and I'm not sure if I'm still playing. Written by AceMac001 from r/nosleep. Hey guys, I need your advice. Something happened to me last night, and I'm not sure whether it's my imagination or if someone is fucking with me. Anyway, the thing is, I'm part of this live-action zombie survival group. It's not LARPing. I'm not one of those guys. We do take on a role, and there is a live-action element. There are no goblins or elves or any of that shit. we have flesh-eating zombies instead, and people take it really seriously. People spend weeks pulling their zombie costumes together. We have zombie babies bursting out of pregnant women and all sorts. It's nuts. Looks mad realistic too. We get told in advance if it will start as a zombie or a survivor, as obviously, costumes need to be made, which people put a hell of a lot of work into. Even if you're a survivor, you need a zombie costume ready to go. You could get cornered at any time and end up becoming a zombie yourself. It's awesome, because not only is it fun, the game is a real challenge, and well, you never know when you'll have to survive a zombie apocalypse for real. Keeps you fit too. It's tricky to move fast and all that makeup while maintaining a convincing shamble. Occasionally, we'll hold our meetups somewhere public, shopping malls or colleges, and freak out the normies. But we usually get together at abandoned buildings. It's less hassle and provides a nicely apocalyptic atmosphere. Anyway, on this occasion, I get the email, and the meetup is at this old abandoned sewage facility. Sounds pretty cool, and to top things off, I'm a designated survivor, which means the role is a bit meatier than just a zombie, and I get to dress up like Bruce Campbell. Double bonus. So, they set the date for the last night. This place is not too far from where I live, but I had to work, so I'm a little late. I was expecting to see zombies milling around everywhere, but when I arrive, there's not a soul in sight. This place is seriously cool, though. Huge circular tanks that I guess they must have used for filtering all the crap that comes down the sewer cover much of the site. This place has been abandoned for years, though. They aren't full of shit now. Either someone cleared it away when the place closed down, or it's evaporated over the years. A couple of them are filled with stagnant water, though most are just sitting empty. No zombies in any of them, though, so I figure everyone must be inside the main facility. It's like a huge brick warehouse. There's a big open doorway that leads inside the building to a vehicle bay. It would have been used to drive trucks inside at one point. I decided to look around for another door. Going through a big entranceway like that, I'd be a sitting duck for the horde. I go around the corner and, sure enough, there's an annex with an old wooden door. It's open a crack, but thick with ivy that's grown up around it and kind of wedged in place. So I have to force it. The door shutters open wide enough for me to slip through. It's kind of noisy, so I freeze for a moment and listen to make sure I don't hear anyone shuffling in my direction. When I'm confident I'm in the clear, I move inside and find myself in an old office space. It looks like someone has torn the place apart. Chairs and desks smashed in pieces all over the floor. The windows are black with mold. It doesn't look like anyone's been here in years, which is good. It means I've got inside the facility without alerting the undead. There's an internal door, which I guess opens into the room with the vehicle bay. I don't expect the room to be zombie-free, so, moving like a ninja cat, I ease the door open a crack and peek inside. It's an enormous open space. Metal walkways line the walls, and in the center I can see a huge opening in the floor. A rusty iron staircase leads down inside it to what must be the subfloors. In the center of the opening, pipework emerges from the lower levels, presumably leading to the big water tanks I saw outside. It's still all quiet though, and definitely no zombies to be seen on the walkways, so I decided that the only option is to head down to the subfloors. That must be where all the action is. The staircase is in a horrific state, but I figure, what the hell? It's pretty typical for the buildings to be used to be in poor state of repair, and nobody has gotten hurt so far. That said, as soon as I set foot on it, the staircase swings back and forth. Some of the iron supports must have rusted through, so in retrospect, it probably wasn't the best idea. Anyway, I get myself all the way to the lowest subfloor without the thing collapsing and step onto solid ground, slightly relieved. I can't see anyone moving on the subfloor either. At this point, I'm questioning whether I've mixed up my days, but for the first time, I hear something, a knocking on the pipes. I decide to follow the sound. Obviously, as a survivor, that may seem like a bad idea. I need to avoid the zombies. But I don't feel like I'm part of the game yet, and there's always that chance it could be another survivor. I listen carefully, and the sound seems to be coming from one particular pipe. A red painted metal one, away from the main opening. The subfloors are pitch black, so I flick on my trusty headlamp and follow along a dark corridor and through a doorway that opens up into another room. This one has clusters of pipework around the walls and ceiling. There are these wheels and valve type things in the pipes, so I guess this would have been the pump room. From behind me, something clangs to the floor, so I spin around and my headlamp illuminates a dark figure shuffling and moaning along the corridor behind me. I stumble back, shocked, but the moment of panic gives way to excitement. The game is on, I think. I pick myself up and scramble away just as the zombie lurches at me. I dash for an opening across the room which leads to another corridor. I hurtle down it and pick a random door. This room was full of old wooden benches and broken tooling equipment, so I guess it must have been some kind of repair station or engineering room. I flash the light around and something lurches from behind a bench. Half its face is missing. Its exposed jaw gnashes at me. Awesome makeup, I think to myself. I turn to head back down the way I came. But before I have a chance, the first zombie blocks the door. I get a better view of him this time and can see he's a beefy guy, with his shirt ripped open and a gaping wound in his chest. He glares at me with dead eyes, and I circle around to the other side of the room, looking for another way out. I spot a door in one corner and head over to it and yank it open. These fucking gnarly hands come reaching in for my throat and send me tripping backwards. I reach out to stop myself falling and grab hold of something on the front of its shirt, but the thing comes away in my hand and I hit the deck, sprawling on the filthy ground. Standing over me is a female security guard with one eyeball dangling from its socket and blood dripping from her mouth. I look at my hand and realize I've grabbed her ID badge, so I just shove it in my pocket. She won't be needing that anymore, and it'd make a nice keepsake to remember the game. I glance behind her and I realize this fucking chick was hiding in a store cupboard. A smart move, but now I know I'm trapped. The zombie Hulk is blocking the doorway, and the other two are bearing down on me while I'm scooting backwards on my ass, trying to think of something. I try to stand up, but I haven't realized I've scooted under a workbench. I crack my head against the underside, which hurts like fuck and makes me dizzy for a moment. Worse than that, my headlamp gets knocked loose and clatters to the ground, spilling batteries on the damp floor. I'm now left sitting underground in a pitch-dark sewer with 3 zombies waiting to devour my liver. It's a genuinely scary moment, but this is the bit where things get really fucking weird. As I'm scrabbling away in the muck for my batteries, I sense this kind of charge coming into the air, kind of like feeling you get before a big thunderstorm. There's a strange flicker of light and a buzzing sound, like electricity, and then suddenly, it's dark again, and the room is dead silent. The zombies have stopped moaning and I can't hear them shuffling around. I try again to find my batteries and I get my hands on a couple of them, but I'm still missing one. I'm thinking I'm going to have to call for help. That's not something you want to do as it breaks the immersion of the game, but if I can't find the battery, I'm fucked. While I'm thinking, footsteps come down my way of the corridor. I decide to wait and see how this plays out, so I hold still and keep quiet. A light sweeps into the room, and someone enters and walks toward me. They get close to my bench, and then there's a burning pain in my retinas as they shine their fucking flashlight right in my eyes. "Looking for this?" a female voice says, placing my spare batteries in my hand. "Are you a survivor?" I say, feeling a little brain dead. "Lucky for you," she says, as I fumble the final battery back into my headlamp. "If I'd been a zom, you'd be getting a sudden craving for the taste of human flesh about now." "Right," I say, crawling unceremoniously out from under my bench. That's the strange thing. There were 3 of them in here when I dropped my batteries, but then there was this noise and light and they all disappeared. "Lured away by another survivor?" she says, and I can't think of a better explanation. "I guess," I say. "You seen much action?" She claims she hasn't seen a thing, before mocking me for hiding under a table. "Why did you take part in this if you're such a pussy?" she asked me casually, like there's an okay thing to say to somebody. I explained to her I'm not a pussy. I'm actually a pretty seasoned campaigner, both as a zom and survivor, but this girl just laughs and says she couldn't see me lasting through the first night in a real apocalypse, which really gets my back up. She just caught me at a bad moment. I considered telling her we should go on separate ways, but I'm kind of creeped out now, so say nothing and follow her out the room. We explore a few more side rooms, but there isn't much to see. There's no sign of the zombies. It's like the action has moved on somewhere else. This place is vast. I'm thinking whoever picked the location is screwed up and found somewhere that's too big to have a decent game. despite the post-apocalyptic ambiance. But then the girl, Laverna, she said her name was, hears this faint humming noise. If we'd been anywhere else, we'd never have noticed it, but in the darkness your senses become more attuned, not to mention the silence down there was almost painful. Anything aside from the dripping of dirty water was going to stand out. Anyway, we find a cable and it's buzzing as if an electric charge is going through it. Like I say, this place has been left derelict for years, decades probably. So for there to be power seemed distinctly odd. We follow the cable and it leads us through another series of corridors until we come to a heavy wooden door. It's in notably better condition than the other doors we've seen, and is closed. It seems this room could hold a clue to unlocking the entire game. In our games, it's pretty common to find clues that can help the survivors to win, but this seems a particularly nice touch. I try the handle, and it's locked. Laverna says these old locks weren't up to much. She thinks she can pick the lock, but then I notice a modern card reader next to the door. I tell her she'd have to be a genius-level locksmith to pick that. I'm thinking the trail has gone dead, but then I remember something. I root around in my pocket, pull out the ID card I got from the security zombie, and touch it to the card reader. Nothing happens. Laverna rolls her eyes and I aim a series of heavy kicks at the lock. I'm pleasantly surprised when the old frame splinters and the door swings off its hinges. I flash a wink at Laverna. Even in the gloom of the underground corridor, she can't miss it, but she ignores it anyway. I push the door open, and the room is filled with monitors. It's some kind of control room. There's an entire wall of security footage. It's got the whole facility covered. I'm pretty sure this is going to reveal the location of the main horde, as well as the other survivors. Once we find them, we can all hook up and escape. It's the big clue we've been searching for. I scan the monitors, but there's nothing. The facility is empty. I wonder whether there could have been a really poor turnout this time, but we usually get hundreds of people taking part, so it doesn't add up. I check again and a flicker of movement on a screen in the bottom left corner catches my eye. We take a closer look and sure enough, it's the main horde. They're all packed into one room, and I mean packed. The horde is one seething mass of mindless, flesh-eating monstrosities. They're jammed in so tight they're all right on top of one another. It's like the front row of a Justin Bieber concert and it looks dangerous to me. Someone could get seriously hurt in there. As I'm saying this to Laverna, the screens all blink off, casting the room into darkness, and then a message appears. You wanted the game? Now it's playtime. The message vanishes, and the monitor flickers back to show the horde. There's a loud buzz and a diabolical laugh sounds from somewhere. A heavy click echoes through the corridors, and on the screens we see the horde come boiling out of their room like someone kicked over an ant's nest. That's when they hear them. Their angry screams and snarls come out of the darkness. It's pretty normal for our zombies to do a bit of snarling, but this is something else. I'd never heard them make a noise like this. It's inhuman and it's coming towards us, fast. We both turn and run. There's a door along the corridor to our left and Laverna kicks it open. We tumble through and find ourselves on a raised platform with a guardrail. I look over the edge and it's just a short drop to a brick floor below. I realize that it's an inspection platform for the main sewer. It's a huge brick tunnel that curves off in both directions. We can hear the horde getting closer behind us, so we leap over the railing and take off down the tunnel, picking a direction at random. The old sewer tunnel is majestic, almost cathedral-like, but I don't have time to appreciate the engineering. My heart is beating outside my chest as we pound along it, trying to put some distance between ourselves and the zombies. They rarely move so fast, but they're somehow closing in. I find myself facing the reality that maybe we aren't playing a game anymore. Laverna spots a side tunnel and we decide to hide. We can't just keep running forever after all. The side tunnel opens into a large open chamber. It stinks in here, and I wonder whether they forgot to clear this part out when they closed the facility. Above us, a small tunnel opens in the chamber, possibly an old storm drain. It's the only way out, but it's about 8 feet off the floor. I'm pretty tall, but I can't quite reach, and Laverna has no chance. She's kind of tiny despite her big mouth. So I boost her up and then run about looking for something to stand on so I can follow her. I find a broken piece of pipe and start dragging it over, but it's too late. The zombies are right outside the chamber. I duck back into an alcove and they stream past me into the chamber, teeth snapping and hands clawing at the air. Thankfully, Laverna hollers at them and they rush at her, furiously climbing over one another to get to her, but she's too high for them. They climb over each other in their desperation to reach her as she takes off along the raised tunnel. I can see a way out for me, but then I get an idea. I've got my zombie costume tucked in my inside pocket. It doesn't come close to matching these guys, just a mass of snarling lips, rotting teeth, and bulbous eyes. But in the darkness, it might just work. I have to weave my way through the zombs, who have been struggling at the back, and they let me pass at first. But then one of them must have noticed something off about the way I was moving and the thing that starts screeching and grabbing at me. 100 rotting heads swivel in my direction, and I burst back into the main tunnel. Clammy hands reaching for me as I tear past. I slap them away, tripping and falling into the stinking trickle of sewage. I scramble to my feet and take off, running faster than I ever have in my life. I spring myself up to the platform and through the door into the main facility, following the pipes back down the corridor at the pump room and the 2 open space where I'd climbed down into the sublevels. The sun has gone down since I went underground, but I'm so used to the dark that emerging to the dust, it seems almost like daylight. A surge of relief floods through me, but then I see the staircase. What had been a teetering death trap on the way down had collapsed into a pile of rusted iron. I realize I'm royally screwed. I grab one of the least rusted bits of handrail from the collapsed staircase and break it off to use as a weapon. I'm thinking I'll take a few of these undead bastards with me. They explode up the corridors, and I brandish my handrail at them. They don't even pause before they rush me, but a shout from above makes me look up. Laverna is there, and she kicks down a bundle of ivy that hangs low enough for me to jump and grab it. I haul myself up, and she makes some comment about me looking like her grandmother trying to get upstairs before we take a break from this facility entrance. I've left my e-scooter outside, so I fire it up. She jumps on behind me and we take off while the slobbering horde spills into the street behind us. This was the last night, and I haven't slept a wink since. I keep looking out my window, wonder if I'm going to see zombies making their way down my street. The thing is, I still don't know if actual zombies have just tried to rip me to pieces, or if I've just taken part in the most intense roleplay I've ever experienced. I've tried texting a few of my buddies from the group, but no response. I've had one message though. It's from an anonymous number and just reads, "Ready to play some more?" I'm fucking freaking out here. What do you guys think? Our next story is just called Zombies by Reckless Rev 1125 on r/short scary stories. We decided to hide in an abandoned housing project, and we'd set up a small camp on one of the upper floors. Claire would go to the roof and with a telescope she found in one of the apartments and return with reports of the front lines. The army had mounted a rescue offensive and were pushing into the city. "How does it look?" I asked. She shook her head. "Terrible. It's a slaughter. We're not going to make it." Cabot sighed. "How bad?" "We're just overwhelmed. There's hundreds of them. Thousands. And worst, they really seem to enjoy killing. Some of them are covered in blood and gore, and I think they might actually be laughing." "What do we do?" Emma asked. "Do we stay here? Do we run?" "We can't run," Cabot said. "We'd never make it. We're just not fast enough with Steve's hurt leg." I felt embarrassed. It didn't hurt anymore. But he was right. I wasn't fast. "Let's go to the front lines," Tex said. "Help out." "Us?" Cabot asked with surprise. "Help out?" "Yeah," Tex insisted. "Every little bit counts." "No," Cabot said. "We stay." "I think we should go," Tex said. "No," Cabot repeated. "We stay." "Who elected you leader?" Tex asked. Cabot raised a pointed finger. "I've just about had it with you," he said. "Get your finger out of my face," Tex demanded. Cabot ignored him and continued to point. "You want to go to the front lines? Go. We're staying here." "Get your finger out of my face," Tex said again. Cabot still pointed. "You think you're some kind of soldier, do you? Then go. We won't miss you." "I told you," Tex said. to get your finger out of my face. He swatted at Cabot's hand. There was a sickening, crunchy tearing sound. Cabot's arm separated at the elbow and dropped to the floor. Cabot stood for a moment in shock, staring at the lost limb. All of us stared. An uncomfortably quiet ensued. "Hey," Tex offered finally, quietly and apologetically. "I'm really sorry, dude." Cabot bent down and picked the arm up by the wrist. "God damn it," he hissed angrily. He examined the end for a moment but knew there was no reattaching it. "I can't fucking believe this." He threw the arm into a nearby trash bin. "Being a zombie sucks," he announced to no one in particular. A single green tear rolled down his rotting cheek. There was a tense, uncomfortable agreement. It did suck being a zombie, and we were not only relatively new at it, we were surprisingly not very good zombies. It wouldn't be long before my leg dropped off like Cabot's arm, and I'd only been dead a week. The gunshot seemed closer now. We knew we had no chance when the living finally came for us. Our last story is called The Thing About Zombie Movies Is, written by Queen of Scots, from r/short scary stories. Henry never understood why characters in zombie movies always ran, so frantically, from zombie hordes. He guessed one automatically kicked into survival mode, but it would be easier to succumb, wouldn't it? Especially if, as in World War Z or 28 Days Later, the transformation was quick, and then one was a zombie and nothing to fear. Henry's girlfriend Mia loved zombie movies. She'd shriek and grab his arm, pressing so close he could feel her heart racing, but she'd push away in annoyance when Henry scoffed. "Why run? I just let him bite me and join him." That's the thing about zombie movies. There's an easy out and nobody takes it. "There's a lot you don't know about zombies, asshole." Mia rolled her eyes. "You do better to run." "I'd just let you run, babe," Henry teased. "I'd stay and be a zombie." When the first reports of necrosis hit the news, Mia was terrified, but Henry still scoffed. "They're slow. A baby could outrun them." "They won't stop, though, even when you cut their heads off," Mia fretted, "and it's spreading fast." When Necrosis B came along, a month later, Henry still scoffed. "No sense trying to run. These bitches got too much speed now." "They're right in our country now, though," Mia panicked. She was haphazardly stuffing food and clothes into a backpack, while Henry chuckled and teased. "Stay here and get killed if you want." She bolted out the door. Henry didn't scoff the next time he saw Mia. She came lurching at him through the backyard, where he'd been trying to pick up a cell signal. The whole damn internet seemed to be down, and he looked up in surprise to see her bloody face, cheek raggedly torn open, teeth gnashing eagerly as he fell on her, and bit hard on his collarbone. And that was when Henry learned why people ran in zombie movies. The pain was searingly hot, shooting through his whole body. He felt his brain pulsing, changing, pushing everything that he had been Henry out, and a stranger, furiously hungry, taking over. His eyes felt like they had been going to explode. His muscles cramped, convulsed, and forced his limbs forward. It was agony. And he was aware. The virus took over most of his brain, but Henry was left to feel it, and be horrified at what he was. He looked over at what, just a week ago, had been Mia, and saw that she knew, too, what was happening to her, to both of them. He hadn't thought that one would be aware that one was a zombie, aware of being trapped, powerless, in one's own body. He hoped what was left of his part of his brain died, before he started to rot, and felt it. Now he understood why people ran in zombie movies. It was just too late to do anything about it. There's Nothing Deadly About Slow Zombies. Written by Forgotten Well, from r/short scary stories. The zombies weren't the worst part of the zombie apocalypse. The thing was, they were slow. A toddler could crawl faster than these zombies could walk. No, the worst part was all the nut jobs who believed that this was the end of times. They went around killing anyone they thought was infected, including tons of people that weren't. That's how my dad died. He had a stroke. He was outside in our driveway. He could barely move, and the zombie patrol saw him and shot him. No hesitation. If they had just called a fucking ambulance, my father would be alive. My mother took it the hardest. She had to come home to find him like that in the driveway. After that, for weeks she was pretty much catatonic. A zombie was bumping into our front door and she didn't even think and just answered. By the time I heard the screaming, it was too late. I managed to kill the zombie, but she'd been bit. I know it was stupid, but I had just lost my dad. I didn't want to lose my mom too. I locked her in our basement. For weeks, I would check the news praying for the government to find a cure. Months passed. Almost all the zombies in the country were killed. New waves would come. The zombies would be exterminated. It went on like that for months. Then my prayers were answered. The government released a message on TV saying there was a cure. They had set up a hospital site. Wrangling my mother was easy. I tied her up in the car and left. Once at the hospital, soldiers helped lead my mother to an exam room. I wanted to go in with her, to be the first thing she saw when she came back to life. But a doctor sat me down outside the room. The reason these waves keep happening is because people are hiding their relatives, hoping for a cure. Eventually they get sick too and spread the infection. Don't be alarmed. There is no cure. 2 gunshots sounded from inside the exam room. The only way to end this pandemic is to kill all the infected. I'm sorry. Your mother died a long time ago. We just finished it. Rage seethed in me. Let me say goodbye. Son, she's gone. You fucking lied to get me here. You killed my mom. Let me say goodbye. The doctor nodded and a soldier opened the door for me. I entered. I was alone. I decided I didn't want to be a part of the living anymore. All of them were liars and murderers. I stuck my finger in my mom's blood and rubbed it on my gums. I needed to bite that asshole doctor quickly before I slowed down. But something was different. The infection mutated. I felt myself getting stronger. The last thing I remember is sprinting at top speed and ripping that lying doctor to pieces. Our next story is called It Is Not Hard to Survive the Zombie Apocalypse. Written by Lore Criticizer from r/Short Scary Stories. Throughout my years alive, I've discovered that 90% of all zombie-related deaths happen for 3 reasons. 1. The person is among the 35% of the population that has basically zero immunity to the zombie virus and died instantly, or part of the 28% that became zombies within hours of infection. 2. The person was killed when the governments of the world launched thousands of nuclear and conventional missiles to create dead zones, forgetting that these dead zones still had untold millions fighting out the zombie hordes. 3. The person is just bad at surviving. They drink river water without boiling, lug around pointless luxuries rather than stuffing backpacks with canned food. These weed themselves out surprisingly quickly in favor of those people who know how to use common sense when times get tough, myself included. I've survived for 8 years now. The walk out of the city was rough, but the human body can last surprisingly long on just biscuits, peanuts, and water. It took a couple months of hitchhiking and some automobile theft, but I managed to carve out a small territory of sorts for myself in the countryside. It's not much. A small farm with a couple fields, some livestock and a tall fence, but it's more than enough. I have 2 neighbors about 30 miles away which I have an agreement with. We always stay on our land save every Tuesday when we meet to trade goods, and we can help each other if either of us gets attacked. Every morning I clear my perimeter for stray zombies. I maintain my garden, hunt the odd animal, keep the generators running. I eat well enough. The local pharmacy has enough medicine to last my entire lifetime. And I hardly have downtime, so I'm never bored. And in the case of a wild horde that's too large for me to handle, I just go to my basement and spend a few days reading and eating canned food until their primitive brains give up and leave. I don't even need to live alone. I could support 4 or 5 people on my land easily. This means that I didn't need to kill them. That grandmother I killed for her dried meat and raisins. The jacket and backpack which I stole at gunpoint from a sobbing child. The man I left inside a bear trap on my way to steal a van. All the hitchhikers I ignored on my way to the farm. None of them needed to die. Our next story is called Things to Do in the Zombie Apocalypse When You've Been Bitten. Written by Hyper Obscura from r/Short Scary Stories. So you've been bitten. Happens to the best of us. Inevitable, some would say. A simple slip-up, a careless moment, a faltering step is sometimes all it takes. But there is comfort in failure. There is peace in hopelessness. And there's so much to do in the zombie apocalypse when you've been bitten. You can go to the library. Do you remember the library? Of course you don't. Silly me. It's still there, though. Millennia worth of accumulated knowledge, collected and curated and leather-bound and neatly stacked upon shelves so tall you'd swear they reached the sky. That's Mr. Lancaster over there, head librarian, keeper of the word, we used to call him. He still is, perpetually now, as it were. Well, or perpetual as rotting tissue and sinew and bone can be, I suppose. Or you can go to the amusement park. The rides and fairs are all rusty and ramshackle and overgrown now, of course. And even if they weren't, there'd be no electricity to power them. But you can still climb the rickety rails on the roller coaster, or sit on your favorite animal in the merry-go-round, and consider the overwhelming silence of a world without humanity. I still buy my tickets at the booth by the entrance. Old habits die hard, I guess. I never knew his name, the young lad who used to work there. I just call him Billy now. Here you go, Billy. Keep the change. But my go-to has always been the zoo. There aren't any animals left, mind you. First thing I did when all this went down was to free them. Open the gates, let them roam the harsh concrete jungle with the hungry dead. A few stuck around, though. Old habits. Domesticated. Indoctrinated. Your mom loved the herpetarium the most. She spent hours in there, staring at the geckos and snakes and the funny little salamanders that you couldn't really see unless you knew exactly where they were. Her favorite was the axolotl. It can regenerate entire limbs, No scarring or anything. Just a brand new limb. Just brand new life. I tended to the axolotl for as long as I could, but it turns out even miracle reptiles have to face mortality. I still visit her sometimes. Oftentimes. Every day. And I think she'd know. Know the difference between a hungry cry and a death rattle. Know what to do. Know how to nurture and care for a baby. Care for you. In a grim world so utterly hell-bent on murdering us one by one. And in the end, who could have known? Who could have known that these little wee baby chompers of yours were sharp enough to penetrate skin? So I've been bitten. Happens to the best of us. Inevitable, some would say. But it's like your mother whispered to me just before she passed on. There's so much to do in the zombie apocalypse when you've been bitten. The zoo it is then. Our next story is called Working a Register in the Zombie Apocalypse. Written by Forgotten Well from r/Short Scary Stories. I woke up 7 minutes before my alarm was supposed to go off. My phone had been sent an emergency alert. There is a high concentration of zombies in your location. Do not go outside unless absolutely necessary. I called my manager to let him know I couldn't make it to work today. The grocery store would just have to make it without me. Hey, I can't come in. There are too many zombies in the area. Brad, it's the apocalypse. There are always zombies in the area. That's no excuse to miss your shift. I tried arguing, but he wouldn't budge. He said if I missed another shift, he'd have to recommend me for termination. I needed this job. Rent prices had skyrocketed since the world ended, and without a roof over my head, I was essentially zombie bait. I'll be right in, sir. Good to hear. And hey, just because the world's ending doesn't mean your world needs to end. You get me? What the hell does that even mean? Asshole. I thought the apocalypse would be different. I thought it'd be like in the movies and video games. It wasn't like that at all. All that happened was a lot of poor people died. I put on makeshift armor so I could go to work. Motorcycle helmet, leather jacket, welding gloves, etc. Thank God it was only 3 blocks. Hopefully I wouldn't die on the way. I had to walk because driving was too risky. Zombies wandered in the roads, and running them over just fucked up your car. Who could afford repairs these days? I barely made it to work on time, so I punched in and ran to my register. For the next few hours, I dealt with pissed off customers complaining about the price of groceries. Well, it is the end of the world. You should be ashamed, taking advantage of people like this. I don't set the prices, I just work here. In the corner of the store, my manager was leading around a group of corporate executives, saying insane shit like, "Despite the world ending, profits have never been higher." Attention customers, a horde of zombies has gathered in front of the store. Please refrain from leaving until they have passed. Instead, why not check out our hot deals or prepackaged deli meat? My manager led the corporate executives to the front of the store and showed them the reinforced plate glass he had installed. "Totally worth the price," he said. "Completely zombie-proof." I hadn't got a raise in years, including when the world ended. But when it came to keeping the store open, my manager always found the funds. I decided I had enough. The world needed to end a little faster. I walked over to the front door, flipped open the locks, and threw open the sliding doors. Everyone started screaming as the zombies poured in, but not me. I just laughed as my manager got torn to pieces. Our next story is called "I'm a Nanny in the Zombie Apocalypse and I'm Immune." Written by the Lady Nix Thalia from r/short scary stories. People have been changing for more than a year now. We're not sure how it started. Only that once you're exposed, that's it. The transformation doesn't happen immediately. That's part of why it's so terrifying. There's about a week between exposure via bite and full conversion. A week full of dread, of bleeding pustules and blackening skin, of sores in the mouth and leaking eyes, until you finally expire and resurrect to spread it yourself. For that entire week, the victim knows what's to come. It's inevitable. Even worse, they know they won't be able to protect their children once they've changed. But that's where I come in, you see. The transformation always happens, to everyone, except me. Doctors don't know if it's my scent that puts them off or something weird about my immune system that makes it impossible for me to catch it. Maybe both. But whatever it is makes me invisible to zombies. So I have a new job in the apocalypse as a nurse of sorts. A job important enough that I have my own bodyguards and an armored vehicle along with it. You see, I carry people's children to safety. Protect babies from having their brains eaten as they're transported to walled cities. I comfort grieving parents in their final moments of lucidity before I essentially disappear from view. I'm wearing today's child in a baby carrier close to my chest as I walk to the car, their tiny bodies swaddled in one of my t-shirts to hide their scent and another shirt draped on top to hide them from view. Their perfect lashes flutter as they suck on a pacifier, soothed by my heartbeat. I have a variety of things on me to help keep them quiet and calm, but I found a bit of plain old rock sugar to be more effective. And it doesn't have any side effects. It's a good job, and my work is meaningful. I know I'm contributing to a better, brighter future. However, the worst part is passing the parents who can't afford my services as they beg and plead for me to take their children. But if there's one thing that survived the end of the world, it's capitalism, and no one rides for free. Our last story tonight is called "Enough with the Zombie Stories Already," written by ZCHXZ from r/short scary stories. They've been proven impossible many times. Simply put, dead people cannot become zombies. Without proper blood flow from a living, beating heart, the muscles stiffen. Not to even mention that tiny little detail regarding, what's it called again? Oh right, conservation of fucking energy. Zombies are a metabolic catastrophe. Hordes of the undead rushing to capture one helpless soul to feast upon their body? Yeah, okay. because the average human can totally feed dozens if not hundreds of walking corpses. The death walk would last maybe an afternoon. Rigor mortis would give patient zero 6 hours at best to eat as many brains as they could, and even in an apocalyptic scenario, quarantine would only need to last like a day. And the dead rising from their graves? Come on. Do I really need to prove necromancy isn't real? I mean, I hate to break it to you guys. I know you all love the idea. Some of you probably even have bunkers or evacuation plan, or at least a survival bag. But the zompocalypse isn't going to be a thing. Hope you're not waiting for it to save your crush and have them fall in love with you during the chaos. Awkward. For the rest of you, the ones who know they'd die in the first 24 hours of an outbreak of undeath, you can rest easy. Aunt Muriel won't be popping out of the cemetery to give you one last visit, so you're welcome for that. Now, if living humans were simply infected, on the other hand. Tonight's story is called I Enjoy Being a Zombie, written by me. My name is Everett, and I never thought I would enjoy being a zombie. I thought that when you became one, you lost yourself to the virus. That may be true to a point. You do lose a little bit of yourself, but it's only the bit you wouldn't miss. It was the most terrifying and freeing day of my life when I turned. I don't think we all come back this way, because the one that turned me didn't seem to care. To give you some context, I was one of the people you see in movies who don't make it past the first day of the outbreak. I was walking home from work when this man began to chase me down the street. I thought he was running away from something at first, but realized too late he was after me. He jumped at me and tore a huge chunk out of my shoulder. I fell to the ground, and he must have accomplished what he wanted because he kept running down the street, probably after the next unfortunate soul. I laid there for what felt like hours, but was probably mere minutes. I felt the blood draining out of me as I slowly and painfully drifted away to nothingness. That's actually exactly how it felt when I ended getting back up. It felt like absolute nothingness. All I could feel was an ache in my head and an odd urge to feed. Other than that, I was very much myself. I wasn't sure how long I'd been out, but the town was in total chaos. There were people running around everywhere screaming. I heard gunshots coming from down the street, and the sounds of sirens were deafening as an ambulance went flying past me. There was a car across the street from where I was, and it was on fire, and it looked like somebody was trapped in the back seat. I ran over to the vehicle as I regained my wits and tried to help the person trapped in the back. It was a young man who looked absolutely horrified. It looked like both sides of his vehicle had been hit, and it looked like it stopped him from opening the doors. I told him to back up as I grabbed a nearby large rock and threw it at the window to try to break it open. I had to do this a few times before the window finally broke open. I grabbed him and tried to pull him out of the wreckage, but for some reason was hit with a sudden urge. I bit down into the man's neck, and blood spurted everywhere. I pulled myself back in horror as the man pleaded. He fell back into the car and stopped moving soon after. The blood felt amazing on my lips. I also noticed the ache in my head had subsided for a moment. It's been about a month since that first day on the street. Since then, I had to embrace the good and bad of being the undead. I tried to hold off as long as I could before feeding again, but the pain in my head was unbearable. So maybe a week into the outbreak, I broke and made my first real kill. It was a young couple that was holed up in an old apartment building. Apparently not all the zombies can speak, because they took me in without much convincing. It only took them a few moments to realize they had made a mistake when I pounced on them and finally relieved my splitting headache. I find that I need to make a kill at least once every few days to keep the splitting headache away. If I don't, then my body takes over, and I have no choice who dies. At least this way I can keep it mitigated to one person every few days. I also enjoy choosing the person I'm going to consume. I make sure there isn't anything left to come back when I make a kill. I wouldn't want somebody else like me around. Might spoil all the fun. Well, I hope you enjoyed that story. I wrote that randomly while I was hanging out with my son, Caden, today, and figured I'd share it with all you guys. So, I hope you enjoyed it. Come back next time for some more zombies, werewolves, or vampire stories. And remember to always face your fears. I think I'm undead. Help? Written by Sort of Haunted on r/nosleep. I've been eating a lot of raw meat lately. It started out as a sushi craving, but then I ended up gnawing on raw steaks while sitting on my couch watching Netflix. I mean, maybe I needed the protein. I guess it started when I woke up in the morgue, so maybe it's trauma of some sort. Of course, there's nothing more horrifying than waking up in a metal drawer, realizing where you are, and immediately launching into the panic attack of a lifetime. Thankfully, the morgue attendant opened the drawer with wide eyes, babbling about how sorry he was or some shit. I'm thinking about suing the hospital, but hey, we only get one life, I think. The weirdest part was seeing my death certificate. There's my name, Tabris. Yeah, weird name, I know, but what can I say? My mom liked angels. And it freaked me the hell out. Apparently, I had been found dead in an alley. Until, of course, I woke up in the morgue. The doctors had no way of explaining it, because they didn't want to admit they fucked up and declared a living person dead. They wanted to run a bunch of tests on me. Fuck that. I'm not their guinea pig. I hate needles anyway. Couldn't focus at work anymore, when the whole eating raw meat thing started to freak some people out. Also, being deathly pale doesn't help. Also, my blood pressure is incredibly low, so I'm crazy lethargic. I quit, deciding to do some freelance writing and consulting. The nightmares didn't help. I kept dreaming I was waking up in this insanely creepy operating room, complete with surgeon with a bloody gown. The dream always ends with him leaning over and putting a mask over my mouth. Police scanners aren't actually that difficult to set up. I did it mostly out of a boredom, figuring I might as well do something with my time. I liked listening to them, hearing about all the various crimes going on in the area. One night, around 2 a.m., I pretty much stopped sleeping too. I heard something particularly interesting. Immediate response needed to shots fired on 13th Street. Dispatch crackled. I scooched closer to my scanner, interested. 13th Street wasn't far from here. We'll be right there, a cop responded. A few minutes later, he was requesting backup. We got a dead body. Need a bus. The officer's voice crackled over the radio. I sighed. I never liked hearing that. I hated the idea of anyone ending up in that hell morgue I woke up in. Officer down. Repeat. Officer down. Suspect fleeing on foot, he said, shouting the radio. Suspect is a white male in his 50s, armed and dangerous. He just shot my fucking partner. I sat up suddenly. For the first time in months, I knew what I had to do. I pulled on a black hoodie, I left my apartment, locking the door. I went downstairs and out on the sidewalk, listening to the increasing sounds of sirens. The weird thing about me now, post-mortem, is I have an incredible sense of smell. Gunpowder has a very distinct smell, like firecrackers, and I could smell it the second I stepped onto the street. I turned to my left, the opposite direction of the sirens, and the scent got stronger. I sprinted down the street. Another advantage of my new condition. I'm incredibly fast and don't get tired. Makes going to the gym a lot more fun. But this wasn't the gym. I was on the tail of a stone-cold killer. So I guess the gym, but more escape room style. But also real life. Next thing I knew, I saw a shadowy figure duck into one of the many backyards of the houses around here. Deadly silent, I followed. I walked up behind him. He was trying to jimmy open the back door of the house when I grabbed him. Hey! He shouted, struggling against my grip. I slammed into the side of the house. Well, what have we here? I said, feeling an evil smile creep across my face. He was a gross-looking dude, with weak old stubble and an unpleasant smell. He was nowhere near being strong enough to fight me off. What the hell, bitch? Let me go! He shouted at me, spitting in my face. Now see, I don't like murderers, specifically men. They have this tendency to kill people who did nothing to them, and to call women bitches when they really fucking shouldn't. I crushed his windpipe, then his spine. He died instantly. Honestly, I always hated those articles about ethical cannibalism or some shit. I read one about a guy who made tacos out of his severed foot. I never wanted to eat human flesh, mostly because of Wendigo concerns. So believe me when I say I couldn't control myself. I ripped him apart, chopping as I went. I even ate his brain, cracking his skull open like an egg. Guess that makes me a zombie? I cleaned up best I could. I felt bad for eating this guy in the backyard of some perfectly nice family. I dragged what was left of him into the streets for the cop to find. I even called an anonymous tip. Then I walked home to do some laundry. The next day, the paper ran a story about it. The cops were baffled as to how they could be chasing this guy one second, only to find him ripped to pieces down the street the next. Apparently, the man's name was Stan, and had murdered his wife after abusing her for 2 decades. Honestly, the only thing I felt bad about was not killing him sooner. Maybe I'll make a habit of this.